Hi there, my name's Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel BandysBooks, and today we are here with a Tag Tuesday video. We're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is one that's always popular around June and July because we're at the halfway point, and you know, it's kind of cool to get some statistics together, talk about your favorite and least favorite books and what have you. So I have been seeing all my favorite accounts doing this, and I figured I might as well jump in. I know I'm a little bit late for the trend, but better late than never, right? So that being said, this is just a little bit about my first half of the year and reading statistics and things, and I hope you enjoy. Question number one, the best book that you've read so far this year. Gosh, I have read so many good books. Honestly, it's super hard to pick. Just off the top of my head, I read Dust Child just a couple days ago, so it's still fresh in my memory, and this one was really, really good. It's by Nguyen Phan. She also wrote The Mountain Sing, which I read earlier this year. I have that sitting over here. That was really good, but this one for me was really moving. Another really good book that I read this year was Yellow Wife by Sadeqa Johnson. I read this at the beginning of the year and it was so moving and heartbreaking and just an incredibly well-written historical fiction. Another book that I really loved was Independence by Chitra, Banerjee, Divakaruni. For how short this book was, it went into just extraordinary detail on partition between India and Pakistan and 3 different sisters, and it just was so complex and so much going on. I could have easily read this book like had it been double the size, so that was pretty remarkable. I also really loved As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh. This is about Syria and it's just such a moving book. I think probably my favorite fantasy so far this year has been The Adventures of Amina Al-Siracusa by Shannon Charkraborty. That was a fantastic, just fun action adventure pirate read. And probably my favorite nonfiction this year so far has been Cobalt Red. That is a book that talks about cobalt and coltan mining in Congo and how like the batteries that we use in all of our smart devices, like our computers, our TVs, our phones, basically anything that's a smart device, comes from the Congo. The book covers what that means for the economy of Congo, the effects that it's had on the population of Congo, the exploitation of people living there, and kind of gives you an idea of how we can do better as a society around this particular issue. So that was a phenomenal read for nonfiction. Question number 2, best sequel you've read so far. So I haven't actually read a whole lot of sequels to series this year so far. I do have quite a few series that I have that are left hanging from last year, but most of them, the case is that the books aren't out yet to have read. But there is one series that I read in its entirety, minus book number 1 this year. So that was the Wayward Children series, and that's by Shannon. I read book number 1 last year sometime, and I enjoyed it. And then I kind of forgot about it, and I got involved in a readathon, and I needed shorter reads to score higher on my bingo cards. And I remembered all of these books are pretty short, and so I ripped through the entire series in like 2 days, and it was so good. Some of the books were definitely better than others. I want to say there's 8 books in total that are published so far, and there was like 3 that I really, really, really loved, and then there was like maybe 2 that were like pretty good, and then there was a handful that I was like, these are just okay. But overall, stunning series, really enjoying it. If you like shorter books and a fantasy-based series where each book could be read as a standalone, then you will probably enjoy this series. Question number 3, a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to read. So I think this is cheating because I've technically already started this, but I'm not very far into it, and that's Chain Gang All-Stars. This book I have been seeing everywhere. I predicted it 2 months in a row for my Book of the Month picks, and I'm so bummed that Book of the Month did not select it. It seems like that's gonna be a huge loss for them. That said, Aardvark did pick it up and feature it, so kudos to Aardvark. I know that it's sold out because I wanted to buy a copy of it through Aardvark, and they were like, sorry, we've already sold all our copies, check back some other time. So I've been seeing a lot of feedback on this one. This was a book that I was hyped about before I saw any feedback, just based on the premise of it. I had requested an advanced copy of it. I did not get the advanced copy of it. I was all about it, like I said, for book boxes and book subscription features. And I actually ended up giving my mom a copy of this book for Mother's Day. Like, I sent it to her, and then she ripped through it and then was like, here, you should probably read this. So I finally have a copy of it now, and I'm like 3 or 4 chapters in. So I'm looking forward to getting all the way through it. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get through it this weekend. Question 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So as with all these other questions, I have multiple books that I could answer with. First up would be Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I believe that either just published or is just about to publish, but I have had really good luck with Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing. I loved Mexican Gothic. I loved Gods of Jade and Shadow. I read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. That one was just so-so for me. I think I read most of her books. There's like maybe one or two that I haven't gotten through yet, but Silver Nitrate sounds really, really interesting. I am very much looking forward to getting into that one. I'm also super excited to see that Jessamine Ward is putting out a new book this year. That's going to be called Let Us Descend. I have been purposefully trying to avoid learning too much about the book because when it gets out, I just want to pick it up and read it and enjoy it for what it is and not kind of like overhype it in my head. I'm also excited about The Spirit Bears Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. This is the author of Hell Followed With Us. I read that earlier this year and I had kind of a mixed experience. Like I loved the concept of the book and I loved the writing style, but it was super gory, which I'm not the biggest fan of gore. I appreciated that this book, like if there was ever going to be gore, this was the appropriate book for it. And so I'm excited to see what they do with their second book. Question 5, biggest disappointment. So again, I have quite a few books that were really disappointing. In this case, I tried to pick books where I expected them to be good and then they just didn't live up to the hype for me, instead of just like the worst books of the year. So if you're like wondering like, oh, I think you disliked this other book more than this particular book, it's just these are the ones that like let me down the most. So the most recent one would probably be Adelaide. I read that a couple weeks back and I don't know, concept was okay, execution was not great. It was something that like has been getting rave reviews. It's been all over Book of the Month. I've been seeing it everywhere and I don't get it. For me, it feels like very glorification of really toxic relationships and I just don't love that theme. In the Lives of Puppets, I know, shocker, TJ Klune. I am a huge TJ Klune fan. I am still a huge TJ Klune fan, but this one for me was just not up to par with some of his previous books. It wasn't a horrible book. By no means am I saying it's the worst book I've read this year. It was probably a solid 3 stars, but for me, having gone into it hoping that it was going to be like a 5-star one that I loved, it was just so-so. I also was disappointed by Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I really enjoyed Ninth House. Dark academia is not my favorite genre, and so it's rare for me to like really enjoy a dark academia. And so when I did enjoy Ninth House, I was like, oh great, this is going to be a series, there'll be more to it. Hellbent was a weird one for me. It was all over the place. It just didn't work the same way that the first book did, but it's a middle book in a series, so maybe book 3 will, you know, bring things back together. And I was also really disappointed by The Wishing Game. So this was a book that I really had no clue about. I requested a copy of it on NetGalley and received it. And then I went into it thinking it was going to be a book like about literature because the cover is all like books and it's a really beautiful design. And it is about books and reading, but it was super, super juvenile, overly simplistic, just kind of all over the place. I really, really did not like that book at all. So I was super surprised when Book of the Month decided to feature it and like everyone was raving about it. I think I missed something. Number 6, biggest surprise. So there's been a couple books that I found surprising throughout the year. One of the books that I found really surprising was The Last Cuentista by Donna Barba Higuera. So I have never really read that much of middle grade. I don't have any kids in the family. I'm the baby of the family, and so I'm just not around middle grade books that often. But during middle grade March, I did decide to read 3 different middle grade books, and The Last Cuentista was one of them. And I loved it so much that I ended up buying myself a copy of this book. Definitely a fantastic middle grade. I also really loved When You Trap a Tiger, which was my other middle grade selection. Both of them were really surprising in how like moving and impactful and complex they were. I guess I had this perception of middle grade books as being like very simplistic. And these were very nuanced and they talked about some really difficult and interesting topics in very thoughtful ways. So I really appreciated that. And that was probably the most surprising thing. I was also really surprised to find out how much I loved The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I read this, I want to say like March, and I kind of have a hit and miss relationship with experimental fiction or like books that are just kind of out of a traditional format. And I went into it, I guess, with very low expectations, kind of thinking that I was going to find it really weird and maybe not get the message. And I actually like really, really related to it. Like I found the message very clear, and the more that I think about it, it's like the more that I can take from it. There was a lot about like suppressing female voices and suppressing female feelings and, you know, societal controls of how females are allowed to present themselves. I thought it was such a cool book, and I'm so glad that I took the chance to pick it up. Number 7, favorite new author. So I'm not sure when they say new author if they mean like a debut author or if they mean like new to you author. So I have a mix. To me, these are new authors just because I haven't read them before. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've never written anything before. So first I picked Rika Aoki. They wrote Light from Uncommon Stars. I read this during Trans Girl April, and I love this book. It was so quirky and fun and interesting. It's kind of a space opera, LGBTQ romance. Like, there's a whole lot going on, and it was just so interesting and like a good fun book, but also with some like deep thoughts in it. So I really liked their writing style, and I would like to read more from them in the future. As I mentioned, I also read Han Kang for the first time and really loved their writing style. I have heard that The Vegetarian is a bit different from some of their other books, but I am definitely interested in reading more of their work in the future. And then just a couple days ago, I read The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue, and I actually found that one really interesting as well. It is about a toxic relationship with a student and a teacher. The thing that I liked about it is that even though it does show a toxic relationship, it's not really glorifying it. It's kind of showing it for what it is and how bad it is. And I just really liked the author's writing style. So I would add O'Donoghue to my new list of authors that I would read again in the future. I also read BC Adjabon for the first time and really enjoyed her writing. I'm currently reading Chain Gang All-Stars, and this is Ajay Brenya's debut novel, so I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna end up adding them to the favorite authors list. There are just so many amazing authors. Like, even in this stack, you know, I read Katouh for the first time, I read Divakaruni for the first time, I read Johnson for the first time, I read Higuera for the first time. So like, the list of new favorite authors is endless. Question 8, newest fictional crush. So this question is non-applicable for me. Unfortunately, I just don't really view fictional characters in that way. Like, I don't really find myself crushing on characters. I don't think I really ever did. Like, I don't remember reading, you know, I don't know, The Hunger Games and being like, oh my gosh, PETA. I just don't relate to books in that way. Number 9, newest favorite character. Oh my gosh, this is the year of strong, badass women, let me tell you. I believe all 3 of the characters I'm about to mention are tough chicks. So first up, I just finished Lady Tan's Circle of Women, and the main character, Tan Yanjian, is such an incredible main character. She is like maimed by having her feet bound, and she's really restricted by the social class that she's in, but she becomes a doctor regardless. She treats female patients. Her best friend is a midwife, which is like a scandalous thing because midwife are like low class and like frowned upon at that time. And she is just indomitable. I just loved this portrayal of 1400s medicine in China, and especially at the hands of women. And Yunjian is such an interesting character, definitely one of my favorites of the year. And then it'll be no surprise that Amina Al-Sirafi from The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi is on this list. She is a pirate. She's in her, I want to say like her mid-40s. She's retired from the pirate game, and then she gets called back in for something that she can't really turn down. And I just felt like Amina Al-Sirafi was such a cool character. Like, I could imagine myself at a bar drinking a beer with her. She's complex, she's contradictory. Like, she isn't a perfect person. She just seems like a real person, and like a real person I want to get to know. And my third character is from multiple books, and that's Medusa. I have read, I want to say 3 or 4 books about Medusa this year. So we read Stoneblind, I read Medusa's Sisters, I read Athena's Child, and I think there was one more book that featured Medusa. But I'm really loving the exploration of the Medusa character right now. I think that in particular, she is a character that gets treated really badly in Greek mythology. I mean, like, almost all the women get treated really badly in Greek mythology, but I think Medusa has it particularly rough. And so I'm loving this like feminist retelling of her story that's been happening lately. Question number 10, book that made you cry. So I am not really a crier. I am rarely somebody that will sit down and like actually shed tears. So I just picked the 2 books that probably made me feel the most emotions, or the closest to crying, I guess, if that makes sense. So those 2 books would probably be Yellow Wife by Sadeqa Johnson and Dust Child by Nguyen and Phan. Both of these are very brutal for different reasons. This one deals with slavery. In particular, it deals with a woman of mixed race background who is married to the head jailer of a slave prison. And she has to make just horrific sacrifices to protect her children and to kind of build a life for them. It's unimaginable, some of the stuff that occurs in this book. I have read a ton of historical fiction. I have read plenty of historical fiction from this era. I've read World War II historical fiction. This is definitely one of the ones that I think has ever hit me the hardest in my entire life. And then Dust Child, this is about Vietnam War and then post-Vietnam War. And it deals a lot with like regrets and the perception of the war, both in Vietnam and in the United States. And we have like a soldier who's returned to Vietnam to look for this woman who is his girlfriend, who he left pregnant. He abandoned her, and he like regrets this later in life. And he's there with his current wife, and he doesn't know how to break it to his wife that he has a child somewhere in Vietnam. We have a young man who is not related to this person, who is looking for his father. He is half Black and half Vietnamese, and he was abandoned by his parents post-Vietnam War. He's grown up in an orphanage, and he has this like hole in his life because he doesn't know who his parents are. And then we see these two young Vietnamese women who are sisters during the Vietnam War, and what they had to go through to survive, to keep themselves financially secure, and like the heartbreak and things that befall them. It's just a really touching, moving book. Number 11, a book that made you happy. So, surprise, surprise, Adventures of Amina Al-Siracusa by Shannon Charkraborty. I think that one of the reasons I love this book so much was because it just made me so overwhelmingly happy. I love seeing a badass female pirate. I love the adventures they got into. I love her reflections on who she is, these contradictory things that she's made up of. It was such a good, fun book. If you're into fantasy, you're into strong female characters, you want something that's gonna be a fun fantasy read, then I definitely think you should pick this one up. Number 12, the most beautiful book that you've bought or received this year. I have gotten so many stunning books this year. These were just the ones that were like within arm's reach. Definitely The Last Cuentista by Dana Barbahera. This is a stunner of a cover. And then Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I also think this cover is just beautiful. And then The Dream Builders by Owendrola Mukherjee. This was sent to me by Aardvark, and I absolutely love this cover. I think all the colors on it are so pretty. And then Dust Child by Nguyen Phan. I think this is a stunner of a cover as well. I love that it's like got this kind of sunset vibe, except they're like really bright, vibrant colors. It's not like a muted sunset. So those would probably be the 4 prettiest ones that I have, just like I said, within arm's reach. Question number 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So my total goal for 2023 is 250 books. I am around like 160, 170 books so far. I haven't updated my count this week, so that's why like a little confusion on the number. So I want to try to finish like at least another 100 books. I think that's quite realistic. I am currently averaging between 20 to 30 books per month. Given that we have the rest of July and then 5 more months, I don't see really any issue with finishing another 100 books. As for what those books are comprised of, I have, I think, 70 books sitting on my NetGalley shelf that I need to read and review. And I have a ton of books on my regular bookshelves that I need to get to. So I am prioritizing at the moment my NetGalley shelf, just because, you know, a lot of those have deadlines, but I have made incredible progress this month in catching up a bunch of my reads from NetGalley. So I'm hoping that with 1 more month of like catching up on the NetGalley stuff, then I can kind of focus back on my regular shelves. But I don't have anything in particular that like I'm really like, I have to read this right now. I'm really just trying to balance different genres and enjoy my reading. So that's it for the Mid-Year Freakout book tag. I hope that you enjoyed hearing a little bit about my reading for the last 6 months. I am very much looking forward to the second 6 months in 2023, and I hope that you will be joining me to see what we get up to over the upcoming months. I hope that you have read lots of good books in the last 6 months, and I hope you have more good books on your shelf for the months coming up. If you like this video, hit thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know what was your favorite read of the first 6 months and your most disappointing read of the first 6 months. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss a video, and that way we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.